Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today I have with me a guy who is a lot better at golf than I am and definitely a lot smarter than I am. We are talking all about performance and, as you saw in the title, managing the chaos with Jamie McConnell. Jamie is the director of instruction, which is a very, very big title, at the Claude Harmon Golf Performance Academy here in Dubai. If you check out Claude Harmon, his dad Butch Harmon, then this all makes sense. These guys are absolute legends in the sport of golf. As we speak about in the show, Butch was coach, support, worked with Tiger for a number of years, and they have produced and continue to produce some of the top golfers in the world. And Jamie basically runs the show here in Dubai. Works with golfers of all different standards and all different age groups. In the show, we talk all about performance, what it is, how to achieve it, how to manage it, the difference between technical coaching and emotional coaching. That's actually a massive part of the show, which no matter what your sport is or what your endeavor in life is or your life goal, I think there will be something that will help you. This is episode number 795 of the InnerFight podcast, Performance and Managing the Chaos with Jamie McConnell. No matter where you are in the world, enjoy the show. Welcome back to the show and welcome to Jamie. We are going to talk all things performance. And mate, you're probably one of the best people I could think to talk to this about, because the game of golf has so many different aspects of performance. But I want to kick off, mate. What does performance mean to you?
Performance to me is being able to do something very consistently over a long period of time, because I think everybody's own performances are different. So depending on what kind of level they're at, everybody's improved performances can be, slightly different in terms of what they're trying to achieve. But I think high performers, or people who perform to their highest level, tend to be very good at doing something consistently over a very long period of time and not really stopping.
Which is essentially golf, and why we see people like you, golf pros, on the driving range.
Exactly.
For hours and hours and hours. Mate, you're basically running, or you run one of the most sought after golf academies in the world. Claude Harmon here in Dubai, son of Butch Harmon, who you just told me has been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Super successful. Is there a playbook that you guys follow of key points of performance to, we'll go on and talk about some of the results that the academy has delivered, but what are the main things that you guys focus on?
They're an interesting family, especially like when you look at Butch and Claude, and when you look at the players they coach, they're all totally different.
Yeah.
Every single one of them swings are different. Nothing looks similar. You'd never line them up and say that they're all coached by the same guy, which is a little bit different than some, like what we would call method teachers, who kind of apply the same technique to everybody. So they kind of treat everybody individually, but ultimately their kind of litmus test is just score. It's just being able to get somebody to score better, and they love to kind of base things on a person's strength. So if you get somebody who's a bomber, hits the ball miles, they don't want to necessarily make that person great at, let's say, putting.
Right.
They just want to enhance their strength and make their weakness okay. And they kind of build everything off that. So they always look for a strength within somebody, and if not, they try and build a strength into somebody, but they don't try and make them really good at everything. So they try and give them something really solid to kind of base their game off and work from there.
Is that the way that you initially learned to play and to teach golf?
Probably not. Like my kind of instruction growing up was very much, you've got to be good at everything. There's nothing can be, I don't want to say neglected, but like, no, you can't have any holes in your game. And like, even I spoke to one of my kids the other day about it, and I was a bit brutal with him. I was like, he had a bad day putting and he's come top 10, he was happy. And I said to him, mate, you don't need to putt well, you need to put average. I'm like, if you put average, you'll win. You beat the crap out of the golf ball, you hit it further than everybody against you. You just have to put average and you'll win. I'm like, Dustin Johnson, if he puts average, wins.
Really?
If he puts badly, he comes top 10. I'm like, that's just the way his game is.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get them to understand that. Like, trying to say that to a 14 and 15-year-old is, they're looking at you going, what are you talking about? Like, I need to be the best putter. I need to be the best this. And I'm like, you have a strength that, like, 1% of 15-year-olds have.
Yeah.
I'm like, use that. Like, base everything around your game on that.
Yeah.
And just be average at everything else.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like, you're going to win. You know what I mean? So
it's so interesting, mate, because it's actually quite a unique approach to performance, where a lot of people are like, work on your weakness. And it's funny because I was quite similar when I started sort of competing in CrossFit in 2011, because I was very good at some things, but I was awful at some things. And I was like, how much time am I going to spend at the stuff that I'm shit at? And what impact will that then have on the stuff that I'm actually quite good at?
Yeah.
And I was the same, but I would go down the road of I'd just get a lot better at the stuff that I'm good at, so that I can excel more in that. But it's not a very common approach. So to hear that sort of the best, or one of the arguably the best golf families, academies in the world is approaching it like that, actually makes me feel quite good.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, even because since I started triathlon, I kind of look at the 3 disciplines and look at the value of each one.
Yeah.
And I've always been a really bad swimmer. Like, you can ask, like, swimming is not my strength. But I kind of looked at the value of swimming. I'm like, even if I smash swimming for the next year, I might shave a minute or two off like a half Ironman time.
Yeah.
But like, if I smash biking or running for the next year, like, that could be 20 minutes.
100%,
and I always look at it. It's probably not the best thing to say on but like, I look at it and go, value for time. Like, I'm not going to win a race. So like, okay, my best bet on improving my times is a bike and a run.
Yeah.
And like, be okay at the swim. Like, don't let it slip any further back. But like, just get really much better at the other two. Yeah. And it's just bang for buck, really. And it's the same with the guys.
You're right in that it's quite high risk to promote it, because it needs quite a mature mindset, right? It doesn't mean, like, this is a nice example, because we might talk a little bit about how you've sort of moved from golf into being addicted to triathlon, but it doesn't mean that you're not taking that 14-year-old kid and putting with him. It doesn't mean that you're not swimming yourself a few times a week. You're still putting that time into it. Yeah. So how do you, as a coach, especially in a game such as golf, which is, you'll probably tell me that it's no different to any other sport, but I just see so many moving parts. Yeah. How do you say to someone, or how do you get them to execute, it's okay to be not super good at putting, we're really going to work because you're driving and you're chipping and all of this stuff is so good?
We kind of quantify it. Right. So like, we'd look at statistics, data, and we kind of break it into 4 areas. So you've obviously got driving, you've got iron play, chipping, and putting. Right. And the thing is, if somebody's really good at driving and iron play, they're not going to have a lot of chipping. They just won't miss many greens. So you're like, okay, value for money, right? If you miss 2 or 3 greens around, like, if the chip's okay, like, chances are you get one of them up and down. You're only making two mistakes around. So you're like, okay. And in, let's say, that 15-year-old's case, you know, he had a bad day putting, fine. Comes back, we look at how many shots. We would use a value called strokes gained, so how many shots he lost versus the field, which was about 2, and we're like, okay, 2's too much. So like, for the next 2 weeks, we'll put some effort into that. See, can we bring that back down to around about 0? So you're putting average. 0 would be basically average. And we'd say, okay, if you're around about 0 and you're gaining on the rest, you're shooting under par, which is where we want you to be. So then we put everything else back on the strength. So we just kind of get him to where he's in a reasonable place. And it's always flowing. So like, if he's doing a really good job of his putting and he's gaining, I'll just like leave it alone. Just won't touch it. I'm like, just he's in a flow. Like, he's doing a good job. Whatever he's doing is working. I don't need to break it. Right. And like, that's a big one with, you know, when you see like Claude and Butch work with the best in the world, their number one rule is don't fuck them up. Like, don't mess them up. So when you go in, you're not going in with the ego of, I'm the coach, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. They go in and they look at what these players do well, and they kind of go, okay, well, that's good. He does this well. And he goes in softly. You know, when you look at them, they don't try and rip the whole thing apart and start again. It's like, what can I add to make them a little better? Because at that end of things, at the upper end, everything's very small. You know, small gains makes huge difference.
I want to pick up on 2 things you said there, mate. we've got to data quite quickly, which in all sport, it's super important. But, you know, you're analyzing pretty much everything, right?
Yeah.
You know exactly how long someone can drive, what their course is. And it's one of the things in golf that I was just like, I just can't be fucked to calculate how far I am from the green anymore, you know, because I mean, I played when you didn't have these GPS in the car, and it would tell you. Where is that point, mate? Where is the data useful, enjoyable, addictive, and where does it become counterintuitive?
Well, I'm a bit funny with it because I'm not a data-driven person.
Right.
I'm not good with numbers. I don't like looking at graphs.
Right.
Like, if I'm looking at my training peaks, I'm just lost. Like, I genuinely just have to think a lot about it. So I almost work in reverse.
Right.
So I kind of look for, I look for red flags as the first thing. So if we go into like our stat system, we'll have the 4 main areas broken down, and basically that'll give us a big plus or negative on whether they're gaining or losing stroke. So like, I just look for the obvious. It's like, okay, -2 on putting, not good, right? Let's just look at that one. So I won't look at all the data.
Right.
I look for the red flags. And then within that red flag, I go, okay, specifically, whereabouts is it that it's breaking down? Is it close range or far range?
Right.
So like, I'll just literally look for the big, I call it the elephant in the room. I'll look for the big thing.
Yeah.
I don't need to look at every little detail of his game. I just need to figure out like which bit is really good, and I'll try and highlight that and say, mate, like your driving is phenomenal. Like you are beating everybody at this.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if we can just tweak that a little bit for next week, then you should be in a good place. So I always look for the red flags. People can get into like the nuances of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and the other thing is people will look at it week to week, which is terrible.
Right.
So I always tell people it's a bit like a stock market. Like if you zoom in, like it's bouncing up and down like crazy, but you want to zoom out and look at it over a 2-month period. So instead of like analyzing week to week and making these really quick adjustments, it's like some weeks it goes in, some weeks it doesn't, but what's it doing over a 2-month period?
Yeah.
Don't look at it over a 1-week period.
Yeah.
It just gives you nothing. It's just guesswork then.
Do people overcomplicate in golf as much as they do in life?
Yes.
Or more?
Probably
more variables.
Probably more.
Really?
Probably more. Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for people to take is, I suppose, the uncertainty of it. You can be hitting it great and play terrible. You can be hitting it terrible and play great. And there's just no it's the one thing I've realized about golf is that there's no logic behind it.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing I suppose that's been in a way a helpful thing for my head in triathlon is that it's very logical.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of guesswork in it. Like, okay, you can have a bad day, you can, not feel great on gels, your stomach's up, but like generally it's quite like you put in this, you get this. You know your times. Okay, there's a push into the nth degree is like, that's a limit, but it's quite like step by step by step. You can see progression quite easily. Golf, sometimes it just comes out of the blue.
Really?
Like I remember Shane Lowry in the Open a couple of years ago, and he had a really bad run of tournaments and he was really struggling. And I seen him on the Wednesday and I said, oh, how you doing? And he just looked down in the dumps.
Yeah.
He's a big, happy, jolly character normally. And he goes, oh, it's terrible. And he went away that evening. He went for 3 pints with his coach. Came out the next day and he ended up winning British Open on his home soil. Like, so you're just like, there's no logic to it. Sometimes it's just about feeling, and you just play and hope you win.
This is awesome, mate. If you are saying that, you're in the game, you're at the top of the game as a coach, that. How do we make people okay with that? As like you said, in endurance sports, in CrossFit or whatever we're sort of basically teaching here, the variables, we know what they are, and to a certain extent we can control them. Like you said, sometimes in golf, you somehow hit and it feels great, and you still end up in the water. Yeah. So it's a beautiful, and by that I mean it's a beautiful shaped shot. It's all come off right, but the distance is just. How do you deal with that as a player, and how do you handle the people that you coach?
I think in both counts, the big word for me, and it's something I've thrown around a lot in the last 2 years, has been acceptance.
Right.
Like it's just accepting the result, and I think the thing is I think it actually goes to all sports. So even like triathlon, where it is more predictable, like ultimately you have to accept the result, whether you've had a good day or a bad day. And you've got to, I always think of it like a circle. You analyze, then you set about practicing something, then you kind of test it, test it in performance, and then you come back around and analyze the performance. So it just goes around in a loop.
Right.
So you're just constantly looking at this loop and just hoping that each time that you go around, you basically improve.
Yeah.
But I think you can apply that to any sport. Like it doesn't always make sense. Like you think of boxing, you think of UFC, you think of all these things. Like sometimes the underdog wins.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we love about sport.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It'd be really
sure.
boring if the one who we knew was going to won every time.
One every time.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what people need to realize, like coaches and students, is the unpredictability is the fun of it.
Yeah.
Like it's the not knowing. It's the standing on a start line or standing on the first tee or standing in a ring and going like, I don't actually know what's going to happen here. This is like exhilarating.
Yeah.
And I think when you see the top guys,
Yeah.
like Claude would call it managing the chaos. The guys who are the best love the chaos. They love being in the middle of that like hype, and they love being in the middle of like just that energy and not knowing what's going to happen and like just going for it. Whereas the guys who wither away just like hate it. They want their nice.
What are they doing, mate? How do they manage that chaos?
I think what they do really well is they actually have that enjoyment for it. So they're in that, and they're like, you know, I always think of it like, you know, pressure is a privilege.
Yeah.
If you're under pressure, like
You're
no
in a
matter
good
what
spot.
it is, you're probably in the spot that you want to be in.
Yeah.
And we say it all the time to players. It's like, you know, they're like, oh, I'm so nervous going into the last round, and I'm in the top 10, and you know, I have a chance to win this. And I'm like, well, would you rather I took the pressure off you and you were in 40th spot and you weren't fighting for anything?
Yeah.
They're like, no, of course not. I'm like, then why are you giving out? Like, this is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Like, the pressure is the enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with everything. Like if you're on for a PB or you're on to win
100%,
something,
mate.
it's like that pressure. Okay, you might fail.
Yeah.
But like, I tell you what, I got myself into position and I'm enjoying being there, and I'm going to do my best to do it, even if I fall on my sword eventually. Like it's like,
why do you think we often, for the most part, we don't have that mindset? We go the other way. And what you've said is so true, mate. It's like we wouldn't be having this conversation if you were 50th. You know, we wouldn't have this problem if you'd have pressed snooze on the alarm and not turned up to run this morning.
Yeah.
Like, but you've got this privilege of being in this unique moment where it's chaos and you can create something quite special, whether that's just running a little bit faster for the last 400 meters, or whether it's, you know, shooting a three on the last hole and winning the Open.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's just what we're exposed to.
Yeah.
I think we're exposed to pretty things all the time. Like you watch golf, I always have to say it to students, like you watch golf, what do you see? You see the best shots from the best players who are playing the best that week.
Yeah.
So you're seeing 1% of shots.
Yeah.
You're not seeing the guy who's at the tail end of the field struggling away. Like Shane Lowry when he won the Open. You've seen Shane Lowry winning the Open.
Yeah.
They didn't show the lowlights of him missing every cut before that, playing atrocious, walking off 17 and saying to me how bad he was. You know, you don't see that side of things.
Yeah.
So like people don't enjoy the highs when they're high. They just expect it to be high all the time. You know what I mean? So when they're in the lows, they don't have that like idea of, they think they should be on a high, when it's like the lows are actually, I won't say the fun bit to come out of, but it's a good challenge to go, right, I'm there, right? Can I just like move forward?
Yeah.
Like, can I move myself one rung up the ladder?
Yeah.
And like that's where to me the joy comes.
It's
in.
actually a super good point, isn't it? Because I don't watch a lot of golf on telly, but when you watch it, you watch as you say, the highlights, and you watch these guys do some amazing stuff, but it would actually be perhaps more inspiring and more entertaining if you showed some of the crap that, like, because I don't care if you've shot, you know, you're under your 67, 68. Okay, you've had a pretty good round, but for sure you've had one or two holes that aren't absolutely perfect.
And they'll never have shown them.
And then never show them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would be a lot more inspiring to do so.
Yeah, but that's why, like, I always tell the kids to go to tournaments. Because they go to tournaments, they have to follow a group or watch, like, several different groups.
Yeah.
And they see the bad shots. And they're like, oh, they're not perfect. Because some of the kids that we teach, they have the idea that they should hit every fairway and every green because that's all they see on TV. Yeah. They see these miracle shots from trees and... You know, again, you think if somebody hits it in the trees, let's say 100 people hit it in the same spot.
Yeah.
You know, one of them might have a whale at it and hit it on the green. That one gets the highlight reel. You know, 10 of them have a whale at it and completely mess it up. And the other 90 just chip it out.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see chip out.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's
the same. Nobody wants to see in, you know, let's say an Ironman, the guy who came, you know, 14 hours at the end. Like, nobody watches that or sees that. It's like coverage is over.
I think people don't want to see it because we're not trained to see it. But if we started to see it, it would actually do a lot for, it's a pretty big statement, but it'd do a lot for humanity, mate, because it would help on every level. It would help the pros, because the pros are also on the other side of this, where they're only seen doing well. So they can, from a mindset standpoint, they always have to be doing well because that's where people see them. So it can help there. It can help inspire younger people like you work a lot with as well. They can only be benefit.
Yeah, and like I actually keep videos like in a hard drive.
Yeah.
Of like elite athletes struggling, because there's times where like I'll have a student and they might be struggling or had a bad day, and I just if they're feeling sorry for themselves, I'll try and pick the right video and pop it to them. So whether it's like the Michael Jordan quote of, you know, I've missed X amount of shots over these many years, or I didn't get picked for the high school team. I'm like, that's probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, basketball player ever.
Yeah.
He didn't get picked for his high school team. You know what I mean? You're feeling sorry for yourself at 16 because you had a bad day. Like, man, like,
relax.
You know what I mean? Like, but they
yeah.
don't see that, and there's not enough of it around. So like, it's great for them to kind of see that and understand that, like, you know, it's fine. Like, one of them had one of the kids that I coached had played in Saudi, and he had a really bad time. He got injured during the round and stuff like that. And he's best to me, I'm so sorry. I'm like, why are you sorry? Oh, well, I played so bad and I did this and I did this. I'm like, did you try really hard?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. He's like, were you good with the people around you? Like, were you in a good mood? Did you say hi? Did you shake hands? Yeah. I'm like, so then why are you sorry? Like, you've done everything you can. You had a bad day. Like, what do you think I'm going to do? Give out to you for shooting a bad round?
Yeah.
He was surprised. He genuinely thought I was going to give out to him. And I'm like, mate, I'd be more annoyed if you shot 69 and you acted like an idiot.
Like an arsehole.
Like, I don't care as long as you're trying.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll keep putting you in these positions. As long as you keep trying, keep going.
How do you link that to the data then? How do you stop someone bullshitting that?
Bullshitting the data?
No, the fact that he tried hard, and the fact that, like, all these other things, because it's a really good example there. Like, today wasn't your day.
Yeah.
It's all good. You had a good time. You were nice to people. You tried your best, but it didn't work. How do we stop that becoming a norm, and how do we stop people bullshitting that they did actually try their hardest? Because again, if we look into fitness, I can see how hard you tried.
Yeah.
So you can't bullshit it.
Yeah.
But in golf, I can't. The measure is harder.
But I think it's emotional intelligence from a coaching standpoint.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, you say, right, I know you tried hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I bet, like, that opinion comes from a load of things. It comes from, you know, you'd be in the background going, like, I know probably a little bit of what's going on in their personal life.
Yeah.
You know, I know, you know, they've been doing well or not been doing well recently in a build-up. Like, I've had 5 classes with them, and every time I see them smash themselves, and they maybe just are tired today. Like, you know.
Right.
And I think it's the same with us. It's like, you know, based on the kind of actions they're taking on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Like, if you see them, if you're around the academy and you see them, like, on the putting green, on their phone, and they might be there for 2 hours and they've hit about 10 putts, you know they're not working hard. Now, if they're out there grinding and they've gone to this tournament and played bad, then you're like, I know he was working hard. Like, I know.
Right.
So it's, a lot of it is, and we've had that discussion before, like when we had the coach the coaches talk with you.
Yeah.
It's like, at the end of the day, it comes down to emotional intelligence. And one thing you said in that is, like, you talked about caring.
Yeah.
And to me, it goes both ways. It's like, does the student care enough to work hard for you?
Yeah.
And then do you care enough about them to make them work hard and continuously be on them?
Yeah.
Because there's some students that, like, I see, they don't work hard. And I know they don't. And they'll bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'll just step away from them. Like, I just stopped putting energy into them. I'll still coach them. I'll still do the best I can with them. But I won't go above and beyond in every way, because it emotionally drains me. I'm like pushing and pushing and pushing and not getting anything back.
Yeah.
And then there's kids that may not be the best kids, but damn, they're trying hard.
Yeah.
And, like, I love that. I'm like, I look at, like, I have one girl, like, she's a local girl, Faye, and she comes in every single Monday at 6 a.m. and she drives from Sharjah before school.
Wow.
And she never misses a lesson. Like, in my whole time, the only lesson she ever missed was when she caught COVID. She missed one lesson. So I'm coaching her for a year and a half, and every single Monday, and she's there before me, shows up at 5:15, and she's there. I'm ready for 6, never misses a session, and her progression has just been so steady from, like, what was a fairly average, below average player to now where she's, like, looking at playing internationally. She's thinking about Youth Olympics, and you're like, this is, and she comes in with the biggest smile you've ever seen on her face. You're like, how could you not want to be standing there at 6 a.m. with this girl who just wants to kind of
But it's exactly what you've said a few times, mate. It's the same as what you said about measuring data on a weekly basis. You're measuring emotional intelligence data over time.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
all
all.
Same thing.
That's exactly what we're doing here, and that's as one of the keys for performance is not only measuring your results on a longer term basis than shit track was rubbish this morning, but you're measuring the emotional intelligence. Is why I have a lot of people, athletes that I work with. They're like, "Oh, did you look at my workout?" No,
you don't need to look. At
I don't need to see your workout. I'll come to your workout in a week. Was it good? And I tried to be nice about it. Was it good? Yeah. Did you hit the numbers? Yeah. Did you feel good? Yeah. Awesome. So you've had a great day. I don't need to go into the numbers to have a look at it. And it's the same when it's bad. But when I look at it over a week, and then I think about how we're going to adjust the next week based on it, then we've actually got this picture of data, and I've got all those comments as well. Yeah. And it's the consistency over the time.
Yeah.
Mate, talking of you mentioned a couple of the sort of top players, and obviously through your academy, Butch has worked with probably the best in Tiger.
Yeah.
It would be wrong to get someone who has maybe a few thoughts on arguably one of the best sportsmen or the most consistent sportsman of all times. What made him so good?
I think that with Tiger, there was only one goal.
Yeah.
Like, and going back to what you asked me about performance, it's like targeting one thing and being really consistent at it. There was no wavering. Like, he just wanted to beat Jack all the time, and then in the process beat every single other player going. And like, there was no way around that. Like, there was nothing would deter him from that. Like, he did not care. And like, sometimes it to people on the outside, when you look at Tiger, sometimes in tournament and things, he's real serious, won't sign autographs, comes across as a little bit of a dick sometimes. You know what I mean? But like, he had to be. Like, to me, though, the guys who are at that level and just want to be that, like, they have to be. You look at somebody who got compared a lot to Tiger was Rory. Yeah. Like, you look at Rory values life. Rory doesn't have that, like, the record is the record and I'm going to beat that record. Rory, like, plays golf so he can enjoy time with his family, enjoy things away. And I think when you look at Tiger, like, there was just no if or but. Like, everything went around that goal, like, from doing Navy SEAL training, which ultimately messed up his knees. Yeah, he went into the kill house, and like the famous story of one of the SEALs kicking his knee, and that's part of how he got so damaged. But like, you think of, like, if he's in that situation, in that stress environment, all of a sudden things like managing the chaos of golf tournament become easy. You know what I mean? Like, he's used to it. He's like, this is nothing compared to like training with the SEALs last week. You're like, so I think just every single thing from when he was 2-3 years old just was aimed at that, and I think he's just a special character. Like, when you meet him, it's interesting. You can see like a switch. Like, I got to walk with him at the British Open one year for 18 holes, and like, for me, he's my idol. Like,
really?
My ultimate idol.
Wow.
And Claude had brought me on, and he was playing with Dustin and Ricky, who Claude coached at the time. We were walking around, and like, we got to about the 9th hole, and there's a tunnel that goes under from the 9th green to the 10th tee. So it goes down, up, and back. You come onto this tee. And it was funny, like, he's all chit-chat walking off the green to us, and he gets into the tunnel and he kind of goes 2 strides ahead. He just goes a little quicker. And it was like putting blinkers on someone. He just completely shut down. So he says nothing the whole way through the tunnel, comes up onto the tee, there's 50,000 people around you, says nothing, walks for 60, 70 yards until the fairway opens back out, and then all of a sudden he's talking again. Like, just completely blinker. Like, he was there to hit that shot. He didn't care what we were doing, who we were talking to. It was just hit the shot, walk down the fairway, get out of the crowd, bang, back to normal again.
That's a hell of a skill.
It was such a quick.
Yeah.
Like, I just noticed him take these like 2 extra strides. Yeah. Just like, he's the first one in the tunnel, he's the first one coming out. You could see he like wanted to be almost the man there, like, and we're all just like shrinking away in the background, and you see
crazy.
just that. It was the thing that I noticed, and I'm like, you can see the differences in him.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just there talking, and it's a practice round. You walk through the tunnel, and he's still in that mode of like, it's just automatic to him. Just straight ahead. I'm the man. You boys stay at the back. I'll hit my tee shot. I'll walk down.
Wow.
And you're just like, and then blinkers off. And it's like the ability to just shut everything out.
Yeah.
Like, everything. And you could see it in that last Masters he won. Like, he wasn't paying attention to anybody else.
No.
He was just, where's my ball going, and that's it, and shut everything else out. And you could see it with Brooks. Like, Brooks was a hole ahead of him, like crowded cheer. Brooks would look back and he'd be looking at where he was and what Tiger was doing, and Tiger was just plodding away, just doing his own thing, and he wins.
He didn't show any real emotion ever.
No.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it depends on the player.
Yeah.
I think it's very individual. I think for him, being quite stoic suited him perfectly.
Yeah.
I think just being it, because it's like that, like what I said, it's like blinkers, right?
Yeah.
I think if you, and I've tried this with players before and it's ended badly, is if you give like a really emotional character no ability to get that emotion out, it's terrible. It's like a cage and a bull. Yeah. And eventually it will just explode.
Yeah.
So I think it very much depends. You get somebody like John Ram, like that man needs to explode every so often. Like, he needs to break a tee or throw a club or do something.
Yeah.
Someone like Tiger, more stoic. Rory tends to be a bit more like kind of, you can see the body language changes a bit. So I think it depends, and I think it's managing it at the right time. Maybe a little of, you bring Tiger into a little bit more emotion might help, it might not. You bring John Ram down in emotion, it might help, it might not. But the only way you figure it out is just trying it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because from the outside, if people look at Tiger now and kind of what's transpired, you could say that the suppression of all of that emotion is playing out now and is potentially damaging his life in certain ways. He might still be happy. It's not for us to know or to judge or to make an opinion based on social media. But it's an interesting line, because if he didn't have the approach to performance that he had and that single-mindedness that you spoke of, he wouldn't have done what he did.
Yeah,
he just wouldn't have done it.
Big time. And that's it. It's like you kind of have to be, like, for me, there's very few guys that I see at the top of any sport that are not known for being a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Like, you look at that one with Michael Jordan, that The Last Dance.
Last Dance, yeah.
Like he's a bit of a dick.
He looks like a dick
but he has to be.
In the series, mate, smoking cigars. I was actually a bit disappointed.
Yeah.
Like,
but you don't see many guys who are not like that. Like, there is some. You can definitely pick out some, but you kind of think, okay, there's definitely something in elite performance where you have to not care about anybody else. Yeah. Like at the top end of it, you have to at some point not care.
So how do you bring that down? Let's go back to, as we've said a few times, you work with quite a lot of kids. You're doing some really good stuff with kids, mate, and I know you're passionate about it. How do you mix those two? You're proud of this kid that's been in Saudi, that hasn't shot well, that but has had a good time and has been nice to people, but Tiger was a bit of an asshole for a lot of the time, and he was the best. So as someone who's trying to develop the very best talent, how do we mix the two?
I think there's two parts to it. You have to look at it, number one, as like, I suppose when I look at the kids that I work with, if one of them or two of them end up on the PGA Tour, I've done an unbelievable job. Because the percentage of people that are ever going to achieve being the best in the world is very, very slim. And I think I'd much rather produce 500 really good humans over the next 10 years that are just brilliant kids, and like they go out and they're associated to us. Like, we put all their colleges, when they go to D1 colleges, we put them on the walls so they feel like they have something to come back to. Yeah. It's like our wall of fame for them. Yeah. So like, I'm like, okay, well, first off, like if we're really not going to have a very high percentage, make them good humans at the very, very least, and then hopefully they end up in golf in some way, if it's not like being a PGA Tour pro. Yeah. And then someone like, it's funny, that kid that like was in Saudi, like he is actually possibly within that 1%. Right. So with someone like him, you kind of have to treat him a little bit differently. And sometimes you have to accept the being a bit of a dick. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's timing. It's like, in that scenario, he was hurting, and you could tell it had upset him that he had not played very well. Yeah. But then there's other times where I'll have to give him a telling off. Right. And like, you have to balance it, and you have to let him sometimes be that alpha, because he's very alpha. Right. You have to sometimes let him be that alpha, and like just accept that like that's part of it. Yeah. And then there's other times where you're going to be like, mate, that's not very nice. Like, don't do that. Yeah. And like he'll know when I'm serious. Yeah. Because I won't tell him off often, but if I tell him off, he knows he's in trouble. Yeah. So I think it's always balancing the two. Like, and again, it's a coaching decision. I've made wrong ones before. Like I'll never forget, there's one German kid that I taught, and I was trying to push him a little bit harder. I thought, right, he needs just that little bit of a push, and he'd come back, and he had played pretty good, but he had come back like he had won the lotto, and he'd won the US Open, and I kind of thought, right, I'll put him in his place. And I shouted over, he was hitting balls beside another really good player, and I'd shouted over to that player, I'm like, when was the last time you were happy with that score? And he goes, oh, probably about 5 years ago. And like, at the time I thought it was a really good, I thought, right, that'll wake him up and that'll give him a kick. And for about 6 months to a year, the kid had completely gone off me, and it was really difficult because I was quite close with him. Yeah. And it's always one that sits in the back of my head. Now we get on very well. Yeah. But like at the time, like I properly hurt him. Yeah. Like that comment was the wrong. That was where you have to stand back and go, that was the wrong decision to make. That was a bad coaching comment. Like,
have you ever spoken to Butch about how he handled Tiger?
Yeah, I've spoken a good bit about him. Like it's kind of just knowing the right. Butch is very good at saying the right thing at the right time. Yeah. So Butch is known as the chameleon. So he could be talking about the Bible 1 minute, and then he could be talking about a night out the next minute. Right. And he could be talking about skateboarding. Yeah. And like he just knew how Tiger ticked. Yeah. And there's a brilliant story that like sums it up perfectly, and it was the final of the US Amateur, which is 36 holes. So it's 18, take a break, 18. Right. And the guy Tiger was playing was winning 5 up after 18. So like it's like almost a dead cert. Like you're doing well not to win this at this point. You're like, and he's happy out, and they're on the range getting ready for the second round. And Butch looks over at Tiger, and the guy had his girlfriend at the time who became his wife caddying for him. And Butch goes, look how happy she is, blah, blah, blah. And he's going on about his wife. So anyway, Tiger's puts the grip between his teeth, and he ends up manages to catch him by, I think it was about 14 or 15. Oof. And Butch said he's walking up to the 16th tee, and he was ahead of Tiger. And Tiger's walking off the green. Tiger comes up and he slaps Butch on the ass. He goes, she's not smiling now, is she? And he just walks off. And Butch was like, he didn't think it had made that much of an impression. Yeah. But it obviously was just the perfect comment at the perfect time. And like Tiger had that in his head all day. He was like, just wipe the smile off her face. Really? Like that was just it all day. Like he just had it. And then Butch said, he goes, oh, I'm going to keep that from now on. But you know what I mean? He's brilliant. Butch is known. There's a few cases of that. Just the right thing at the right time. Like emotional intelligence. Yeah. Super high.
I was going to say, mate, that's probably like if you put something like that together, Butch has said something that's quite funny, quite comical. Yeah. Tiger's turned it into anger to fuel him, and that's just driven him. Yeah. And that he was angry a lot, and a lot of these guys are angry, and they're able to take something that is just laid out, like Butch laid this out of the guy's girlfriend, and he's able to turn it into a focal point and just absolutely drill it. And
same with Jordan, right? Like you look at the Jordan documentary, and he's like, he made up stuff. Yeah. Like he literally made up stuff in his head to get angry at somebody else, so he could beat them. And it's like, there's definitely, like I say, with those individuals who are the best, there's just something different about them.
So then we come to the argument really of emotional versus technical coaching, really, don't we?
Yeah, big time.
How does that play out for you, mate?
with great difficulty, because the emotional is very, very difficult to manage.
It's almost a real problem. I don't know if it's been exacerbated by sort of what everyone went through in COVID, or it's exacerbated by the fact that, you know, people are talking out more about numbing feelings, the mental fallout of professional sport, or what it is. But when people sort of sign up to be a coach, you know, we buy all the textbooks, we strength and conditioning, this many sets, this many reps, you've bought all the golf books, or you look at the angle of swing and the speed of club head, and you've got all your tech there. But really, it's not anything but emotional.
Yeah. I find it interesting recently, even for my own development, because I've been looking for more technical knowledge as something recently. I find it really difficult to get something new. Right. I find it really difficult within golf to find something that I haven't either looked at before, seen, that I don't understand. Like it's very, very difficult to find something technical that I can work on that I don't already know. But that's brought me way more into then the emotional and psychological stuff. Yeah. And I've found tons of that stuff, and I find that stuff really interesting. Yeah. I've gotten really into that in the last 2-3 years. And then even spreading it further afield and looking at different psychologists in different sports and how they tackle things and how they deal with things. And for me, that's, again, I suppose there's at a base level, you start with a high handicap golfer. Yeah. there's a certain amount of technical they need.
For sure.
When you get into the absolute
great technical stuff when it comes to golf.
When you get into the elite, like, I think it is definitely way, way, way more emotional. Like, it's dealing with like a happy athlete or a happy golfer, and sometimes that's not even the best thing. Like, sometimes they are better angry.
Yeah.
They like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes when you're feeling crap, you just want to bury yourself.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you just want to, that's your escape. And I think that's the interesting thing, is looking at, I suppose, how even personally people are feeling. Like, sometimes you have to program to get them away from whatever they're doing in the background, and then be able to get them back into what you want them to do. And it's kind of almost giving them even fake success sometimes. Like, sometimes you want to give them a workout maybe that's so easy that they're guaranteed to smash it and they're going to come out happy as Larry.
Yeah. And
you know, you just did it almost as a placebo, and it's like, same at golf. It's like trying to give them success on a small scale just to get them to escape maybe things that are going on in the background is, and again, it all comes down to just emotional intelligence. It's like being able to judge the situation in front of you. Yeah.
And I guess leading on from that, that's probably why it interests you as well. You as a person, mate, you have this super sort of relaxed manner. I don't think I've ever seen you angry, shout, lose it. Probably not in the right environment to see it. You probably have, but how's my question is as you're going through this journey and as you're helping more people in, for what for me is the most complicated sport in the world, and then we put emotional intelligence on it. How are you staying, or are you really relaxed? And if so, how are you staying so relaxed and so composed about things?
Like I'm generally quite relaxed. Like, it takes a lot to get me going, but if I do get going, I can lose it as well. I think it's probably awareness. I think it's just like, even in the last year and a half, 2 years, like, I've had really hard times, and like, I suppose things that have helped me is just definitely people. Yeah. Like, you look around you and you see people doing cool things and always being there for you and helping, and I think that's been a big one. And then there's stuff that I do that just like I found journaling weirdly. Like, if you had told me 3 years ago, like, you should journal, I would have laughed at you. Yeah. And I found it like great just as a brain dump, just like write things down, and like it's just off your head then. I think just overall, I think the awareness of there is lows, and lows are normal, and I think they're always going to end. Yeah. Like, it's one of my friends wrote a really good book called The Golfing Buddha, and it's his link between like Buddhism and some of the short stories that he's had over the years, and he's a brilliant coach. But he basically has like I think it's the 4 Noble Truths or whatever it is, but one of them is like, there will be suffering, and number 2 is like, suffering will end. And I just kind of always think of that. And I always remember, if there's the perfect example was the Into the Dark last year. It was like, I remember coming up to the 40k mark on the run onto the mosque, and I'm like, right, I'm just gonna tell Steve, just bring me back to Zad's. I'm ready to quit. Like, okay, you didn't do it. It's a big job. Fine, no big deal. You've nearly run a marathon. It's fine. And the 2 people that were there that I did not want to see at that point was you and Stacia Breen. And I'm thinking, if ever there was 2 people that I could not quit around, this was it. And I was like, right, you're nearly there. The suffering will end eventually. Just keep going, because whatever suffering you're facing now, it's going to be a lot worse if you quit in front of these two. But like, it's true. And you just had to, at that point, you had to adapt and just break it down. And I was like, okay, walk 200, run 800. And it's the same with life, right? It's like, if you're having a shit time, just like get up and make your bed the next morning. That's a win. Like, at least you're out of the bed. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you have to almost break it down so much. But that's just normal. And I think people think it's abnormal. I think it's the most normal thing. Everybody's got highs, everybody's got lows, and you just keep going.
Yeah, and I think that probably links back to what we were saying, is that everyone thinks it's a perfect world, and everyone sees the top level of sport as, you know, you look at triathlon, you see some of the stuff on YouTube of Jan Frodeno, you know, like, you're like, wow, this guy's just a god in this sport. We see the same on, you know, but then on the flip side, when a documentary gets released about what really happened with Tiger, everyone's like, oh, well, he's an arse. Like, so it's interesting perceptions, isn't it?
Yeah. But and you think everybody wants that, right? Everybody wants that. Yeah. They want to be Tiger, but it's like, do you really want to do what Tiger did to get to there? Yeah. Like, do you want to go into a kill house? Do you want to like jump out of planes and like do all that and have, you know, a childhood where your dad's like doing everything he can to put you off on it? Like, for 99% of people, that would just break them. Yeah. Like, totally. They just would be a mess. Yeah. And like, maybe Tiger is a little bit of a mess in the background, but he's probably also working, he's later in his life now, he's working things out, and
maybe
you can see a different person
as well.
Yeah, well, you never know.
Mate, before we wrap it up, I want to, based on what we've been speaking about, I want to try and look forward a little bit to where it will go. We've gone through, and I think with all professional sport, we're at quite an interesting time because of these things coming out, like the greats of times gone by. I'm reading Eddie Merckx's book at the moment, and there's not much on emotional intelligence in there. But as things are moving, like we probably wouldn't have had this conversation like this with someone from the golf industry 5 to 10 years ago. We're talking more about the dropout of Tiger's single-mindedness. We're talking about children and trying to get in touch with emotional intelligence. We've probably got to a point where 80% of our job is actually emotional and only 20% is technical. Where is it going, or where does it go over the next few years?
I think you see a bigger split. I think you see two groups of people going in two very different directions. And I think ultimately they might all go back to health. I think you'll see people who go down a technology route, and basically what they'll do is they'll end up just buying into that like instant gratification. This is going to help me, whether it be in golf, it's like, okay, this new gadget or this new club is going to change everything. And then you'll see the guys who kind of realize that, like, okay, tech isn't really that great.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately it comes down to actually just playing golf or doing a run, or like that. The data and the tech is great, but ultimately, really, that's not actually what changes or moves the needle. And I actually think even in terms of a health thing, like, you'll probably see the people on the technological side ultimately have some real issues way down the track. And then you see guys who are like a bit more kind of balanced and healthy, and they'll probably live better lives. I think you'll just see a huge split until eventually the tech side kind of starts to realize that maybe that's not the best thing for them. But the hardest part is with that tech side, there's a lot of money behind it. A lot of value, so
that's
like,
the problem,
people will always push that from a marketing side. But I think you'll see a big split.
And I think I know it's not the same in golf around the world, but I think definitely because of the barrier to entry, which is money, of golf in Dubai. Like, you go and play golf in the UK for 10 quid a round, it's easy. But when you see certain parts of the world that have a high barrier to entry, which is money, if you put something in there tech related, which you charge for, you'll see a big uptake. Whereas if you've listened for the last 45 minutes, you'd know that actually it's mainly what you're trying to do is just, you're actually trying to coach people, but you're just trying to build good people. Yeah. That's what you actually care about.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'd rather be around good people.
Yeah.
Makes me happier. Yeah. If you're around good people, like, regardless of performance, it's like, you're probably going to be happier. Yeah. If you're around people who are, being around Tiger is not an easy job.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine what it was like being like in that inner circle for so long. Yeah. And he's had a bad day and he's walked off. Like, being around those people on bad days is difficult. It's really
Does he still work with the Kiwi guy that used to carry his clubs?
No, they had a big falling out. Yeah. They're a long time gone. He's the biggest paid
New Zealand sportsman of all time or something.
Yeah, Stevie did well. Stevie did all right. Stevie Williams.
Awesome, mate. We'll wrap it up. I really appreciate it. That's a lot for people to think about. And thanks for sharing a few inside lines there. So good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.